Trevor Moore. Briefly, a little background. Assistant Chief Trevor Moore has been working for fire agencies as a wildland firefighter since 2001. He has been an LA County Fire Department forester since 2007. He currently works with communities in very high fire severity zones for wildfire prevention, which includes, of course, parts of Calabasas. He also oversees the natural resource section, prevention grants, vegetation management, environmental review, fire plan, and tech ops. And as Alicia mentioned, community members will be able to go ahead and write their questions in the Q&A section on this stream. Megan will go ahead and moderate this part at the end of the chief's presentations. She will repeat the questions for either chief to answer. Thank you very much.
One moment, I'm just going to share my screen.
This is our world of technology.
Yeah, I just have one small difficulty, but it should be okay.
Oh, beautiful.
Perfect. There we go.
Okay, can everyone see it now?
We can.
All right, awesome. Then Chief Smith, go right ahead.
All right, Ms. Mayor, thank you. And I appreciate all the support from the city of Calabasas. Your firefighters appreciate it. And we highly value being able to serve the city of Calabasas and people that travel around and through Calabasas. And we really appreciate your support and also the support of the residents within Calabasas. So thank you for the great introduction. So I am the fire behavior analyst, is one of my part-time roles, which is a full-time job for the County of Los Angeles. So I live in the world of fire danger, relative risk, and what fire seasons bring us, and promotion of large fire growth. And I do this at the national level, the state level, and here at the local level. So this is a lot of cooperators take place into looking at what relative risk is based upon current field conditions and climatology, and weighing it against 100 years worth of fire history in the area and current and predicted weather conditions. So all this information is available, and we can give you some great resources where it's available. This just shows a snapshot of the latest data that was retrieved based upon where we're at in our drought. So going into this, and there is a prime fire season for the Santa Monica Mountains, which relatively happens from June 1st to Christmas. And we look at how much precipitation in our rainfall year and how it affects the live fuels or the dead fuels with in and around the wildland communities. So we have the wildland native vegetation that's out there. And so this puts us in a category due to the climatology on our seasonal drought that we're in. We had average rainfall going into this, once again, fire season, but it still puts us in that seasonal drought areas of severe and extreme drought. So the seasonal outlooks that we have gives us a snapshot of what we can look at as far as going into the 2022 to 2023 season. So we have a winter rainy season that is trending to be delayed due to La Nina. Oh, okay. Let me work on my audio here. And then we also have temperatures that are trending to be above normal through December, And remember, the above normal, we know what normal is because we have the historical data to tell us what normal is. So what does above normal be? Well, that can trend from 3 to 5 degrees only, or it can range from 3 to 10 degrees, but not widespread. It can be on a daily basis, like we have above normal temperatures today. There will be nearly slightly below normal amount of offshore wind events through December, and significant wetting rains will likely precede 2 or 3 offshore wind events, at least with moderate intensity. And I'll show some graphics based upon what the severity and what the relativity is to Santa Ana wind events that impact the Santa Monica Mountain Range, which directly also impacts the city of Calabasas. So I know this chart looks a little busy, but I'll work you through it. So if you look along the left-hand side of the screen, you see a value of 0 to 12. Along the bottom hand of the screen, you see the calendar year. And this shows the frequency amount of high-risk days that we have, or associated high wind days. And you look at the average number of Santa Ana wind conditions and the number of moderate strong Santa Ana conditions and when they fall. So I blocked it out the left-hand side of the screen where we have January and February, which is predominantly when we have our highest wind days, but we don't have significant amount of large fire growth because those windy Santa Ana days fall or happen to be after we've had 2 to 6 inches of rain through January and February. So that promotes green grass to grow. And so you don't have the same ember catch or you don't have the same ember receptive fuel bed as you would as you look on the right-hand side of the screen where it shows October, November, and December. And as you know, that we could have little to no rain up to Thanksgiving or Christmas, but we get potentially 2 to 10 Santa Ana wind events. So with that being said, we have our strongest winds in January and February for the longest duration, but we have our most destructive winds with wildfire traveling across the landscape in October, November, and December, based upon the fact that we didn't get 2 inches of rain or greater to promote those fine fuels or new fuels to get lush and green because they're still in a dead state when the fuels are at their most vulnerable position, meaning they're very dry. So looking at watershed fuel conditions, that's the native vegetation that's throughout the area. Looking at that, we track those and they fall into 2 categories. We know that we have summer and fall, and as we trend into summer, we know that Mother Nature has turned off the sprinkler system, meaning that usually by the middle of April, we don't get much rain. We may have isolated rain, but our fuels are very smart. So they tend to dry up based upon soil moisture, based upon precipitation or lack of. So our fuels are programmed to dry up, and they do this on a cycle. So the lack of precipitation that's forecast, and we have those dead fuels that are out in the wildlands, and then we have the live fuels that are out there in the wildlands. We measure those, and we look at what their moisture range is in a dead fuel compared to a live fuel, meaning the live fuel still has a root system. It looks like it is dormant and very decadent, but it is a live fuel. It is just in a position of seasonal drought. So without a significant amount of water weight in it is why it looks very brown and unhealthy in the fall, which is normal. However, when we get into our February, March, and April, and May, when it's very lush and green, that's because we've gotten rain and the soil moistures are high. So the vegetation that's out there, whether it's the native vegetation or even your larger fuels like your oaks, respond to that through bringing up that moisture through the root system, making them lush and green. So when we have annual grass, we know that gets very green during the gets very green during the spring and early summer, it has a very hard time promoting fire start and spread. When we have dry grass, that's what transitions us into initial attack, meaning we have a high probability for a fire to start and spread. And does it lead to an extended attack, meaning that does it go over the course of one day or multiple days, is based upon forecasted and current climatology and also what the state of the fuels are at the time of the fire start. So we have really on fire history in Calabasas, we have very challenging fires. We can have a fire any day of the year. However, how that fire burns and its characteristics are significantly different compared to when we have a Santa Ana wind event. And right now we have no green up with the precip that we got within the last 10 days. It hasn't stimulated really any green up or green growth to reduce or eliminate our fire threat when we get a Santa Ana wind. So what Los Angeles County Fire Department does, and this is with our forestry division, we have a database that goes, this shows 1981 to present. However, we have, of course, before computers, it was done manually on papers and tables, but we have close to 100 years of live fuel moisture data. But with computers and what we were able to data catalog from 1981 to 2022, if you look at this chart, on the left-hand side of the chart, it shows a value of 40 up to 220. If you look along the bottom, it shows January 1st to December 31st. So it shows a calendar year. And if you look at the legend on the bottom, it shows critical, what the measurements are on live fuels and for this current year, and what it looked like last year, and then the average from 1981 to today. So we know that if you look at the circle, and we're at about 57 on our live fuel moisture content, we are at below what we consider a critical level, which is a live fuel moisture content of 60. And why that is value of 60 is important, because the vegetation that is out there responds to those soil moistures like we talked about earlier. And so we sample these. And how is that sampled? Our forestry division goes out to targeted areas and cuts a sample of the native vegetation that's out there. They take that vegetation and they weigh it, and then they cook it in an oven to get rid of all the moisture that's in there. Then they reweigh it, and then there's a formula that you use that gives you a representative percentage of how much water weight is being retained in a fuel. So things that we do on the fire danger component daily that we look at is we look at what are the state of the fuels that they measure these live fuels every 2 weeks. We look at the current climatology and forecasted climatology to give us that relative risk. So there's a lot into fire danger that we look at for that relative risk, so we can see what the potential is for a fire to start and spread and what the potential on how large it will be. If you see where it says, oh, go back, thank you, where it says fire activity increases, and we have a reddish pink box that's on there, we know that when our live fuels, when they're measured and they get to 80 and then less than 80, we know we have the live fuels that are in a state that they don't have as much water weight, and so it takes less heat energy to move fire across the landscape. So that's when we look at, we have a different set of vulnerabilities on fire spread and challenges, and our tactics are based different for fighting a fire with a live fuel moisture that's at 80 or greater compared to 80 or less. And so now we're below 60. And so we know that we have a high potential for a fire to be very aggressive on a routine day, but we have more vulnerability of fire crossing, going across the landscape on a Santa Ana red flag day. So our fire danger analysis that we use, we know that right now our annual grass is still brown. It's very receptive in all areas with sunlight. We know that we have live fuel moistures that are at a critical level. And just because they're at 56 or 57, they're going to burn the same whether they're at 60 if you have a strong wind. We have a moderate chance of high fire danger on routine days. We know that there's a low probability of large fires in the absence of wind. So if you look at the city of Calabasas, the largest non-wind driven fire we had, I believe, was in, I'll have to think, maybe 13 or 15, somewhere in there, which was the old fire. It started off of Mulholland and then transitioned to the top of the ridge. And that was under a southwesterly wind in a fuel bed that had very mature native vegetation. And it was topography dominated in nature with a westerly wind. And it went for 900 acres. A 900-acre fire, yes, is a large fire, but doesn't have the same characteristics of a fire that happens if we go back just to what happened on the Woolsey fire. The environmental conditions were significantly different to promote a different set of fire conditions. Your Los Angeles County Fire Department, to target when we'll have a high-risk day, we use a burning index. And we use an analysis in this burning index that take the combination of local fuel conditions and the climatology that's forecasted to look at what the vulnerabilities are for the day. That gives you a number, and how that number is rated. The higher the number, the greater the risk, the greater the potential for large fire growth. And we do this daily. So things on thresholds for, excuse me, I have to turn on my light right here. Thresholds that we look at for a high risk day and what today's fire danger or a day's fire danger may be. We look at when we have live fuel moistures that are at or below 75%. We measure those grasses through how heavy they are or are not. That is based upon how much water weight is within those dead fuels. With also the larger diameter fuels and a 10-hour time lag fuel, something that's at a 1/4 inch in diameter to 1 inch in diameter, how much water weight is within that we measure every day. If we have wind speeds that are greater than 35 miles per hour, and if we have a burning index of 191 or greater, we know that we have the right recipe to support a high-risk day and the promotion of large fire growth. And so I'll pause right here real quick, and I'll give you an example. 3 days ago, we had very cloudy, gloomy conditions. Today, we have a high-pressure system that is giving us an offshore flow, a moderate offshore flow. But the burning index today is only 68. So with that being said, we know that because of the state of the fuels, the slight precipitation and coastal fog we have and the light wind speeds doesn't get us near that burning index number. So we do have the potential for an initial fire to start, but the probability of a wind-dominated fire is very minimal. So if we look at this shows September, this is what our daily fire danger analysis shows. This one, it happens to be from September 13th. And so what Los Angeles County Fire Department does is we know that our climatology is different in different areas of the county. So within Calabasas, we fall within the Santa Monica Mountains. It shows ROS, which is a remote automated weather system or site. And in these sites, we have the Chesbro, Ross, Malibu Hills, Beverly Hills, Leo Carrillo, Malibu Canyon, and Topanga. And then it is doing nothing more than collecting data on outside air temperature, relative humidity, dew points, precipitation. And with that data, we utilize that, and it gives us a forecast of what the next day temperature is going to be, relative humidity is going to be, wind speed is going to be, our 10-hour time lag fuel, and then it goes through a data processing, fire danger analysis through National Fire Danger Rating System that we are contributors to, and it gives us a value. And so with that value, we can weigh what our relative risk is on a daily basis. And so with that, this is what your firefighters use, and what we use is a communicative tool in the Santa Monica Mountains. So if we know that the burning index, which just showed at 112, that we know, if you look at this chart in the upper left-hand quadrant, shows the burning index per hour from 0 to 450. It shows May through December. And this, if you remember how you used your Peachy folders, it's the same way. Is you would go to the month, you'd go up to where the burning index value would be, and where those come together puts you at this blue line, the black line, or this horizontal dash line. And we know that in reference it was at 112. And if you did that, it would put you right at the blue line for October, and know that we are on at average for what our burning index is. And how this card is communicated to firefighters for a pre-fire setting, it gives you relevance to historical fires. So if you look at what the burning index was for the Woolsey fire in 2018, it was at 412. So that gives us an informed decision on what that relative risk is, that we have the potential for a Woolsey type fire scenario, given that it starts in the right place, and it has the topography to move through, it has the vegetation to move through. So that's how we can plan and staff appropriately in case of a high burning index day, which is, as well as I'm sure you can inform yourself, that that's associated with a red flag that has been issued. Then also within that, we have an interpretive card that we use for our fire managers all the way down to the ground level firefighter. And what does that burning index of 112 mean? What does the burning index mean that's at 400? So if we use 112 as a reference, we know that we're in the green category. We know we have a BI range between 50 and 149. And when you have a BI, a burning index value between 50 and 149, it gives a snapshot of what fire conditions you can anticipate that based upon 100 years worth of fire history and climatology. So it gives key indicators. It gives us tactical engagement options on how fire sizes happen associated with that burning index. There's more variables to that. However, we'll stop on this slide because I can tell you that when we had the Lobo fire, it was not a high risk day. It was a routine day. It happened on a southwesterly facing aspect at 2 o'clock-ish in the afternoon. So it's where that we had southwest winds that were going to push the fire. It started where the fire had light grass to be able to support fire start and spread. And it was driven through topography and those lighter fuels transitioning into those heavier fuels. And if you look at the burning index for that day, it was roughly 101. It shows a fire size class of 5 to 250 acres with that.
Drew.
Yes.
Got a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Do you have a question, Chief?
Sorry, no.
Oh, okay. So this actually, after we have a fire, we look at what the burning index was, we look at the fire effects, We then just don't fight a fire, then walk away from it. We look at what the environmental conditions and fuel conditions were so we can support the next fire and make sure that our data and our relative risk analysis that we use has validity to it. So in closing, a high-risk day will need the combination of high winds and dry weather. Large-scale winds are routinely forecasted in the fall and in the winter months. High winds and large fire growth is dependent upon spotting ahead of the advancing fire front. Spotting has to have a receptive fuel bed, which is dry grass. That's where we get exponential fire growth from the hundreds of millions, if you will, of embers that have the residency time in a wind column or the convective smoke column that transports those embers downwind to start new fires. That's why we have that exponential fire growth based upon wind-driven fires. We have that potential because the current state and forecasted climatology will support this spotting, because we know that we will have a high risk day based upon winds going into from today to Christmas. And it's all dependent upon when Mother Nature gives us precipitation. We know that our live fuel moistures are below 60%. And so this will, on a high risk day, produce aggressive fire behavior. And we know the combination of these two factors will create an advancing fire front with significant spotting. And then large fire days in the months of October and December have the potential 10,000 plus acres, and they're most all associated with rainfall totals that are 2 inches or less at the time of the fire start. The average fire size, or within the first 4 hours in a fuel bed that is very mature, in this beautiful chaparral community that we live in the wildlands, averages close to 4,000 acres within the first 4 hours. And then once we have that fire that starts and spreads, and as that fire environment enhances, it gets to 10,000 acres within the first 4 to 8 hours. And that is what, as people can think about, of what fire history has shown us, and it creates a lot of challenges for your firefighters, and of course with people's homes and life safety. And I'd like to thank you for your time, and we'll pass it on to Trevor.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. So tonight I'm going to talk about what you, Joe homeowner, can do to help protect your house during a wildfire. Next slide. So we know that these fires, we think about, flames pushing a house, catching a house on fire, but we know it's really these ember cast fires. So the embers are firebrands that carry in the air. They land on or around the structure, ignite something, and then the structure ignites. So what we found is home hardening is a really great way to help protect your house against these ember cast fires. So what I've done here is I've got home hardening into 4 different categories. I've got roofs and rain gutters. I've got ember entry points. I got hazards within the 5 feet. They're calling this zone 0. And then defensible space beyond 5 feet. Next slide. Looking at your roof and rain gutters, we know the roof has the greatest exposure to fire embers, so it poses one of the greatest risks against these ember cast fires. You have to have a Class A rated roof. So asphalt shingles, cement, metal, clay, no wood shingles. You want to check if there's any cracks or gaps within your roof. If you've had any leaks recently and water's gotten into the roof, that's a potential area where embers could get into your roof and into your attic. You want to check the cleanliness of the roof. That's very important. You see leaves and debris pine needles on top of this roof, in the channels, inside crevices, in the nooks and crannies. You want to clean that annually. We recommend you doing this twice a year at least, beginning of summer before the fire season starts, and then before Santa Ana winds, and then after every wind event, you want to get up on the roof and make sure you're keeping it clean of anything ignitable. The next section is about Ember entry points. So there's many areas on your home that we can fortify to help it be Ember resistant. We've got windows, exterior doors, garage doors, chimneys, open eaves, and vents. Windows, doors, and eaves. If possible, you always want multiple pane tempered glass windows. Clean all the combustible material 0 to 5 feet from in front of windows, because if that stuff ignites, it could compromise the window, and that window pops, and now we've got embers coming into the home. Exterior doors. Make sure the thresholds and the weather stripping is airtight. You don't want embers blowing in through the doors and under the doors. Garage doors is another big one. You want to make sure there's no cracks or gaps, and the door is sealed. You also want to consider replacing garage doors that are easily manipulated by wind. We've seen in some of these Santa Ana events where garage doors are pushed in. Now the house is being filled up with embers. Also want to look at the eaves. If you have open eaves or exposed eaves, you just need to make sure they're caulked, they're plugged, there's no cracks or gaps. Make sure they're sealed. Vents. Vents are a huge issue. So if you've got a vent into your attic, that's an entryway for embers to come into your home. We want to make sure you locate all the vents on your house. Dormer vents and ridgeline vents, those are on your roofs. Anything coming into the attic, like the gable vents, vents under your eaves, even your crawl space vents. So most homes have a 1/4 inch mesh screen. That's code, and that's going to keep the critters out of your house. But we want a finer metal mesh of an 1/8 inch or smaller metal screen to stop embers from entering the home. They also make prefabricated type vent covers that are baffled or have louvers on them with the finer mesh behind them. A lot of times, you know, Joe homeowner can just put mesh right over the top of the existing vent and fortify it that way. You can also do it from inside the home. It's not necessary to remove the old vent to improve the old one. So the next big area of concern is, excuse me, zone 0. So this is the 0 to 5 feet around your structure. And I like to tell homeowners, think about your house and how it reacts when wind is hitting your house. So does the wind hit a certain section of your home that captures the wind? I like to call that the catcher's mitt. So think of it, if we have an embercast storm and embers are being thrown at your home, where are these embers collecting? What are they going against? Where are they landing? Is there ignitable material within that area, that 0 to 5 feet from the house? If there's something that's combustible, it will ignite and then it will catch your house on fire. Therefore, it's very important for you to remove all combustible materials that are in this 0 to 5 zone. If you've got firewood or outdoor furniture, wood mulch, combustible vegetation or debris or litter, this stuff has to get moved out of this zone 0. You have to keep it clean, lean, and green. If there's vegetation on the structure, if you have vines crawling on the house, you have to get that stuff off the house. You have to clean it up, remove all that dead material, get it out of that zone 0. You know, many plants look clean and green from the outside, and then you open up the plants, there's a ton of dead material inside of there or underneath the plant. This stuff can easily ignite. We have to remove that and get it out of that zone 0. It's all about the maintenance. You have to keep this stuff out of that area. Attachments to the homes can be another hazard. So if you have a fence or a deck or an arbor that's attached to your home, you have to really think about removing all the vegetation off of those attachments. Because if that ignites, now it's attached to your home, now your home ignites. So you have to maintain all of those as well. Keep them caulked, sealed, all the debris, all the litter away from those attachments. If you have something against the home, like a fence or an arbor, it's always good to have metal flashing where it is attached to the structure where embers could land. You also do not want trees touching your roof, laying on the roof, or on your roof line. We recommend 10 feet from the roof line. So now we're going 0 to 30 feet and beyond. So we call this our defensible space area. This is the area that makes it possible for firefighters to come in and defend your home. It gives the firefighter safety. It also gives you proper spacing and creates less fuel continuity to slow the rate of spread of the fire towards your home. And this will make the flames less intense as they come to your house. This defensible space is all about maintenance. You have to weed whip the areas with dried out weeds, keep the plants spaced, clean and green, maintain them, trim them up, skirt them, get all the dead material out from underneath them. So you really need to focus on home hardening. Home hardening is a huge key to protecting your house. Focus on the house and then work your way out. Think about the roofs and gutters, the eaves and vents, the windows and doors. Zone 0, it's that 0 to 5 feet, the critical zone, then 0 to 30 and beyond. The more proactive you are with your hardening of your home and defensible space, the more you improve your chances of a home surviving a wildfire. So that was about home hardening, and that's what the individual homeowner can do. City of Calabasas also asked me to put on a presentation about Firewise. Firewise communities are something that the state has put together. It's more about a community doing this fire prevention within a certain area. So why would you want to become a Firewise community? When residents get together in a neighborhood, it can make a huge difference against the risk of wildfire. Firewise USA is designed to help you do that. Helps you organize, stay in touch. It gives a sense of community. And there's also some financial benefits for project funding opportunities, some insurance benefits, and it helps you identify community leaders. Steps in becoming a Firewise community. So there is an application process. And first off, you have to make a neighborhood committee, hold some meetings. This is the key point of Firewise. It's to organize communities with fire prevention message to spread in their community. It usually takes a handful of people to help get organized. A good method I recommend is you split up the community into zones or blocks. For example, if you have an HOA of 60 homes, you split it up into 4 zones and have a block captain for each zone. This helps distribute the information to all the community, and it's easier to manage. Organize meetings to keep people informed with newsletters or door hangers. Part of the process of the application, step 2, would be plan your site boundaries. For example, you have a map of your HOA. It's every home within that HOA. You need to have a map drawn up and show this area. It can be a very simple map of just a Google Earth and with the outline around your community. That's when you need to track volunteer hours or work done, and that's considered money in kind for your community. Start the online application on firewise.com for your community. Step 3 is a risk assessment. So this is where you have to reach out to the state liaison. Here in LA County, it's Los Angeles County Fire Department, as we are the contract county for the SRA, the state responsible area. I have a email link up here that you can send to LA County Fire Forestry to get a forester to come out and do an assessment. And I'll also put some stuff in the chat when I'm done here, my personal email and phone number if you have any questions about home hardening or Firewise. But once you reach out to us for this risk assessment, a forester will come out to your area. We're going to do a general overview of the community and what you're doing good for fire prevention and things you need to improve on for fire prevention. This is not about the individual homeowner, but it's kind of a macro view of the community at large. This is an assessment example. So the assessment that the forester is going to do is very generalized, and it talks here roofing materials, composite shingles, metal, cement, tile, or clay. Is greater than 75% of the homes have a Class A roof? Or is it 50 to 75% of the homes have a Class A roof? Or is it 25 to 50% of the homes have a Class A roof? So it's a really broad view of the community, and it never singles out one person in the community, but it gives us targets and goals to achieve later on down the road. Step 4, make an action plan. This is where the Firewise community, the board or the committee, will use the risk assessment provided by us to create a 3-year action plan. You can break it down year by year and identify and prioritize actions to reduce ignition risks to homes. For example, within that action plan, you can say things broadly, like we would like our community to be 50% upgraded to 1/8-inch mesh screens in the attic covers by the end of year 1. Or it can be very general as participants will strive to complete annual percentage of vegetation management on property yearly. These can also be spread out over multiple years. There are some requirements to become a Firewise community. Each year, neighbors complete educational and risk reduction actions identified in their plan. These go towards your site's annual reporting efforts. Activities that count towards your investment are on their website, and you can see all of the stuff that they count towards your work. They take your sweat equity and they put it as a monetary value. So everything you put into it can be counted. You can also use their volunteer hourly worksheet on their website that helps you keep track of the community and the residents on how much time and effort they're putting into this Firewise community. There is a requirement for each household to contribute towards Firewise community. Typically, it's about $30 per household. And that can be also money in kind or sweat equity. That's when you need to reach out to Firewise and tell them about it. When the above criteria has been met, the resident leader applies for recognition through the Firewise portal, portal.firewise.org, describing education and mitigation work in the site. Each year, sites renew their status by reporting their activity. And that's a little bit about Firewise. I know the city was asking how that worked and how you become a Firewise community. So tonight I gave you guys examples what the individual can do for home hardening, and then what communities within Calabasas can do to become Firewise communities. And I'll drop in the chat a bunch of information and links and contacts.
Thank you, Chief.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Courier, and I am the Community Services Liaison for Division 7 of LA County Fire. I will be moderating the question and answer portion. So if anybody has any questions for either one of the chiefs, you can put those in the Q&A function, and I will direct it to either one of them. There are none in there so far, but we can wait a minute or two and see if anybody has a question. And I will also put my email in the chat as well, under Trevor, so that, under Chief Morris, so that if anyone has any questions later on, they can email me. Okay, so there is a question in the Q&A that says, please tell us about the zones in our city. Chief Smith, you want to take that one?
I would love to take that one. So it is a countywide effort. However, the Santa Monica Mountains are through the great work of what Topanga has done for 20 years with their zone concept. And so what our intent is in working with the group on zoning out the Santa Monica Mountains, or you live, if you're out here in our Battalion 5, and so we have the cities that we work with all the city staff on creating a zone concept. So we have geographic areas of reference for areas throughout Los Angeles County. And so they're going to be organized in a clockwise fashion with 3 letter designators. So Calabasas would be CAL, and then it'll be associated zone number. And so we will be starting here with a Know Your Zone campaign. So that zone concept, you know what zone you live within. So if information needs to be distributed through different notification platforms and validated platforms, that we can get information if it affects a certain zone. So what does that do for your fire department, your law enforcement? It gives us geographic areas of reference if we know that we have certain emergency conditions or situations that we need to act upon, and gives residents that live within an area, or people even traveling within an area, the information and how they could be affected. So it is not a one-stop shop for everything that goes on where you live in the zone concept. It is a tool for us, once again, to have geographic areas of reference if we have to push out notifications or do any tactical planning or anything on an emergency basis. And that'll be coming to you soon for education and information.
And those zones that Chief Smith was just describing will be made public on Monday, October 24th. So after that, everyone will be able to go onto the website and find out what zone they're in, and learn some of the hazards within their zone. So there will be more to come on that. Another question that is in the chat is, will you please provide names or contacts for those who can assist with home hardening? And I know that you put some of that stuff into the chat, Trevor, but I don't know if everyone's able to see it. So we may have to send that information out separately.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I would always recommend, if you live in the area of Calabasas and you have your local engine company coming out to do your brush inspection annually, tie in with those engine companies, talk to them about what they see on the property, what they feel that you can do better, and they would definitely give you the right direction to go. There's also different organizations that do home hardening inspections. The RCDM does them. I know there's an organization within Calabasas that's just starting up to start doing home hardening inspections. I think that's Brian Cameron's group. So there are different avenues to have it privately done, and then also the agency, LA County Fire, when we're out there annually.
So the next question in the Q&A is, I've noticed that there are properties that have not cleared the brush on their property. Has LA County Fire Department policy changed on brush clearance? So, I mean, both of you guys could probably speak to that.
I'll let Trevor handle that one, and if we need to enhance it, I will.
Yeah, I mean, the policy has not changed. That's pretty typical is we'll get homeowners pointing at their neighbor's yard saying, hey, they need to clean this up. If there is an issue, if there is a property that needs to be cleared, you can report that to your local station and see if that has been approved or if there is a pending 410B, which means they're in non-compliance of the brush clearance. So it is something that is enforceable through county fire code.
Okay, thank you, Chief Moore. The next question is it okay to have live plants within 5 feet of the home as long as dead brush is cleared?
Well, like I said, it might look live, but if you pull apart those branches and you look inside of the brush or the bush or the shrub, there is dead material inside of there that can ignite. Now, this zone 0, this 0 to 5 feet from the home has not been enforceable at this point, but there is legislation in place right now where the Board of Forestry is determining this 0 to 5 feet on what is ignitable and what is allowed within this area. So after the first of the year, it will be decided what in this 0 to 5 feet can be allowed. And here at LA County Fire, we're going to send out that information to the homeowner, let them know that they have a year before we're going to start enforcing this 0 to 5 feet, the new compliance within the 0 to 5, the zero zone. So right now, I would say take a look at that vegetation. You think it's green, you think it's clean. It might be. Is it tall? Is it tall enough that if it ignites, will it get your eaves? Will it, compromise a window? Do you love this vegetation? Is it worth it, or can it be removed? But like I said, in a year, we're going to push the education side of that zone 0. And then within a year, we're actually going to start enforcing 0 to 5.
The next question that came up is, where are evacuation locations for homeowners living west of Parkway Calabasas? Do they have emergency equipment stored for homeowners?
So it sounds like we're talking about evacuations and routes. Is that what we're gathering from that, or how is that being?
It mentioned specific evacuation locations, so I think that maybe
Okay.
is where would evacuate to.
So one thing that we need to do with evacuations, when we do an evacuation order, direction will be given of where we need people to go. We always cannot have set evacuation centers or locations because daily activities can drive that to a different place based upon the nature of the emergency. So evacuation routes can be variable. Where you're going to end up is going to be variable because we can have the best place for an evacuation center that we know that is our primary location. And I'll use an example of an evacuation center. We use King Gillette Ranch. King Gillette Ranch right now has the Knights of Jack going on. So we have to look at areas and have different options that it can accommodate the amount of people that we may have based upon the emergency. So we have a series of, or a group of evacuation locations that we will validate that are going to be applicable at the time of the emergency. So there is not one set location. That all has to be determined based upon the nature of the emergency and if that is available.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Another question. Some of the homes in my HOA are designated for annual fire inspection. Will all homes in our community get fire inspections next year since we live in an extreme fire risk area?
I can take that. Yeah, the brush inspections, the deck list has grown. So I don't know that specific neighborhood, but it's a good chance that, these fire severity zones are not shrinking. They are getting bigger. And so if, there's a few in your neighborhood that aren't, and then the few that are, I would imagine they're all going to be in at some point. Yes.
Thank you, Chief Moore. So I don't see any other questions in the Q&A at the moment. I believe City Manager Kindon wanted to say a few words as well.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And before I just offered a few words, I wanted also to just ask Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro, Councilmember Weintraub, if there was anything else that they wanted to add or ask Chief Moore, Chief Smith.
No,
I'll
just
go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say a big thank you. I think this information has been great, and hopefully we can replay this for residents who weren't able to tune in tonight, because it's a lot of great information.
I'll echo the same sentiments. Thank you. And thank you, Megan and staff, Mike, obviously, Debbie, and of course, Kindon for putting this forward. It's really important. And this information is very important as well. So thank you all.
Excellent. And also, just to echo that, Chief Smith, Chief Moore, we appreciate your time tonight. We know it's a sacrifice away from your own families and other things that you could be doing, but we also realize that any change that we make as a community to harden homes or be prepared or understand the fire season makes us better prepared and better equipped. And so we know that any small task, any small action that we take is so important. Big thank you also to Megan Courier, who's so generous with her time and helping us as a community. And we'll be continually sharing this information. I do want to acknowledge that Mayor Pro Tem Shapiro and Councilmember Weintraub, they see emergency preparedness as the most important thing to be working on as the council, and have directed us as staff to do that. And we are going to be diligent in those efforts and working with Debbie and Mike to continually to look at ways that we can provide information to the citizens, to provide the tools that the residents need, not only for fire season, but other emergency preparedness activities. So again, thank you to all of our participants and our panelists. And we look forward to working with you in the future again on other projects.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Sure.
Thank you.
Have
Be
a good
safe.
night.
Be well.